The huge meeting room floated in space between three different star systems. It was built long ago when different alien races first decided to stop fighting each other. The room was bigger than most cities, with special areas for each type of alien to breathe and live while they talked. Admiral Vexthul walked to the center of the room. He was tall, with 4 strong arms and skin that looked like dark metal. His people, the Korthani, had been warriors for thousands of years. Behind him stood other aliens. Some looked like living crystals, others like floating gas clouds, and some like giant insects with too many eyes. The Admiral raised all 4 of his arms. The room became quiet. Across the galaxy, billions of aliens stopped what they were doing to watch. This meeting would decide the future of everyone. "My fellow beings," Vexthul said in a voice that shook the walls, "for 3,000 years we have lived in peace. For 3,000 years we have followed the great Armistice. But peace makes us weak. Peace makes us forget who we really are." A crystal being named Veltar flashed different colors, which meant he was worried. "Admiral, the peace has brought us great things. We have built beautiful cities. We have created amazing art. We have learned so much about the universe." Vexthul turned his 4 eyes toward Veltar. "Yes, we have created pretty things. But we have also become soft. Our children do not know the glory of battle. Our warriors spend their time making music instead of preparing for war. This is not natural." One of the gas cloud aliens spoke in a voice like wind through trees. "The Armistice saved us from destroying ourselves. Before the peace, millions died in our wars. Entire planets were turned to ash. And those wars made us strong." Vexthul slammed his fists on the speaking platform. "They pushed us to build better ships, stronger weapons, smarter tactics. Now look at us. Our newest warships are the same design we used 1,000 years ago. We have become lazy." The room filled with worried sounds. Some aliens made clicking noises, others hummed, and a few changed colors rapidly. They all knew Vexthul was right about one thing. Their military technology had barely changed during the long peace. "What are you saying, Admiral?" asked a spider-like creature with 8 legs and silver fur. Vexthul smiled, showing teeth like metal daggers. "I am saying the Great Armistice is over. As of this moment, the galaxy returns to its natural state. We return to war." The room exploded in noise. Some aliens shouted in anger, others in fear. A few actually cheered, but Vexthul was not finished. "But this will not be like the old wars," he continued. "We are civilized beings. We will fight with honor. Each species will claim their territory. Battles will follow the ancient rules. No planet-killing weapons. No attacks on civilians. This will be war as it should be. A test of strength and skill." Far away from this meeting on a small blue planet called Earth, things were very different. The planet looked peaceful from space with white clouds and green lands. But if someone looked closer, they would see cities that touched the sky and ships that moved between the stars like they were crossing a street. In one of these cities, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in a meeting room with other humans. They were watching the alien broadcast on a big screen. Sarah was drinking coffee when Admiral Vexthul made his announcement. She almost spit out her coffee. Did he just say they're going back to war? Director James Morrison started laughing. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. "After 3,000 years of peace, they want to start fighting again? What are they, children having a tantrum?" Dr. Elena Martinez, a scientist with short black hair, shook her head in amazement. "Look at their ships," she said, pointing at the screen. "They're using the same technology they had when the Armistice started. Fusion drives, energy shields, metal hulls. It's like they stopped learning. Maybe. That's what happens when you have peace for too long," said General Patricia Adams. She was a strong woman who had spent her life preparing for wars that never came. "You forget that the universe can be dangerous." Sarah Chen looked at the list of species that Vexthul had mentioned. "Wait a minute. He talked about territory for the Korthani, the Zephyrians, the Netheri, and all the others. But he didn't mention us." The room became quiet as everyone realized what she meant. "We control over 200 star systems," Morrison said slowly. "We have colonies on thousands of planets. How did they forget about us?" Dr. Martinez pulled up a star map on her computer. It showed human territory as a big blue area in one part of the galaxy. "Maybe they don't think we're important," she said. "In their old records, we were just a small planet with primitive technology." General Adams laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Primitive? We haven't been primitive for a very long time." Sarah Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the city stretching toward the horizon. Flying cars moved between buildings that seemed to touch the clouds. In the sky, she could see the shapes of starships coming and going like busy insects. Should we contact them? She asked. Let them know they forgot about us? Morrison thought about this. Maybe we should wait and see what happens. If they really want to play war games with each other, that's their choice. We don't have to get involved. Besides, Dr. Martinez added, what if they ask us to pick a side? We've been neutral for so long, most people wouldn't know how to choose. General Adams made a sound like a snort. Neutral? We've been preparing for war for 3,000 years. Just because nobody attacked us doesn't mean we've been peaceful. This was true. While the aliens had spent 3,000 years creating art and philosophy, humans had spent the same time asking one question. What if someone tries to conquer us? Every new discovery, every new invention, every new idea had been tested with that question in mind. The result was a human civilization that looked peaceful, but was actually the most prepared military force in the galaxy. They just didn't know it yet because no one had ever tested them. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Admiral Vexthul was finishing his speech. The war will begin in one standard galactic month. Each species will have time to prepare their fleets and choose their targets. May the strongest races claim the best territories. The crystal being Veltar flashed red with worry. Admiral, are you certain about this? Once we start fighting, it may be hard to stop. Vexthul's metal teeth gleamed. That is the point, crystal friend. We have been sleeping for too long. It is time to wake up. As the meeting ended, none of the aliens thought about the quiet blue planet in the outer rim of the galaxy. In their minds, humans were still the primitive creatures they had been 3,000 years ago. They had no idea that those primitive creatures had spent every day since then getting ready for exactly this moment. The galaxy was about to learn that some sleeping giants should never be woken up. 6 months had passed since Admiral Vexthul declared the end of the Great Armistice. The galaxy was at war again, but it was a strange kind of war. The different alien races fought like they were following rules from an old book. Their ships moved in straight lines. They announced their attacks before making them. They even stopped fighting at certain times so both sides could rest and repair their ships. To most aliens, this seemed normal. This was how wars were supposed to be fought, with honor and respect for the enemy. The Korthani Empire had taken control of 12 star systems from their old enemies, the bug-like Arachnari. The crystal people called Zephyrians had captured 3 mining worlds from the gas cloud Netheri. Every few weeks, fleets would meet in space, exchange fire for a few hours, and then the losing side would retreat to fight another day. It was all very civilized and predictable. Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Military Command was reviewing battle reports in his crystal tower on the planet Zephi. His body flashed blue and green as he read, colors that meant he was pleased with their progress. The war was going well for his people. A younger crystal being entered the command room. This was Junior Analyst Kristal, barely 200 years old and still learning about military strategy. Commander, Kristal said, her crystal body flickering with nervous yellow light. I have been studying the galactic territory maps and I found something unusual. Veltar's colors shifted to orange, which meant mild annoyance. What kind of unusual thing, Analyst? We are busy planning our next attack on the Netheri gas mines. Kristal brought up a holographic map of the galaxy. Most of it was divided into different colored areas. Red for Korthani space, blue for Zephyrian territory, purple for the Arachnari systems, and so on. But there was one large area that had no color at all. Here, Commander, Kristal pointed at the blank space. This region contains over 200 star systems, but it is not assigned to any of the warring powers. According to our databases, it belongs to a species called humans. Veltar's crystal form went completely dark for a moment, the equivalent of a laugh. Humans? I remember that name from the old archives. They are the primitive bipeds from the small blue world. They barely had fire when the Armistice began. Actually, sir, Kristal said carefully, according to these records, they had already achieved spaceflight by the time of the Armistice, and they now control quite a large territory. Veltar's colors shifted to dismissive purple. Impossible. Even if they had primitive rockets 3,000 years ago, how much could they have advanced? They are probably still using chemical fuel and metal ships. Mark their territory as neutral space. They are not worth our attention. This conversation was happening all across the galaxy. On the insect world of Araktar, General Zixith was having the same discussion with his scouts. On the gas giant of Nethmore, Admiral Valesh was dismissing reports about human settlements. Every alien military leader made the same decision. Humans were too primitive to matter. They were all making the same mistake. While the aliens had spent 3,000 years enjoying peace, humans had spent 3,000 years asking a very different question. Why isn't anyone trying to conquer us? At first, humans had been grateful for the peace. They used the time to explore nearby star systems and build colonies. But as the years passed and no aliens came to visit or trade or even say hello, humans began to worry. Maybe the aliens were planning something. Maybe they were waiting for the right moment to attack. Maybe the peace was just a trick to make humans lower their guard. So humans did what humans do best. They prepared for the worst possible situation. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood in her laboratory on Mars, looking at her latest creation. She was Earth's leading expert on alien technology, even though she had never actually seen any alien technology. Everything she knew came from old databases and her own imagination about what aliens might build. Artemis, she said to the computer that helped her with research, show me the latest test results from Project Prometheus. The computer's voice was calm and friendly. The dimensional folding drive performed within acceptable parameters. Dr. Tanaka, we achieved a fold ratio of 1/847,000, which means we can cross the galaxy in approximately 3 days. Dr. Tanaka nodded. This was good progress. The old alien records suggested that their fastest ships took months to cross the same distance. What about the reality revision engine? Still in testing phase. The last experiment successfully altered the fundamental constants of physics in a small area of space. However, we are still working on controlling the side effects. Dr. Tanaka made notes on her tablet. The reality revision engine was one of humanity's more ambitious projects. The idea was to change the basic laws of physics in a small area, making it impossible for enemy weapons to work properly. It was probably overkill, but humans believed in being prepared. On Earth, General Patricia Adams was meeting with her staff at the Global Defense Command. The room was filled with displays showing human territory, hundreds of star systems, thousands of colonies, millions of ships moving between them. Status report, Adams said. Colonel Martinez stood up. All frontier worlds report normal activity. Our long-range sensors detect alien military movements in their territories, but nothing approaching human space. Good. What about our defensive preparations? The orbital defense platforms around all major worlds are operating at full capacity. Each platform can generate enough firepower to destroy a small moon. We have mobile defense fleets stationed at every strategic point. And of course, all our colonies have underground cities that can survive planet-killing attacks. Adams nodded. This was what 3,000 years of preparation looked like. Every human world was a fortress. Every human ship was designed to fight against enemies they had never seen but always imagined. What about our offensive capabilities? Dr. Sarah Kim, the military's chief scientist, answered this question. The entropy lance is ready for field testing. It can unravel the atomic structure of any material by increasing local entropy. The probability cannon can make enemy weapons malfunction by altering quantum probability fields, and the dimensional piercer can attack targets in parallel universes. These were just the conventional weapons. Humanity's real military advances were much more exotic. Meanwhile, back in Zephyrian space, Commander Veltar was planning his next attack on a Netheri mining station. His strategy was simple. Approach the station with his fleet, announce his intention to attack, wait for the Netheri to prepare their defenses, then fight until one side decided to retreat. It was how wars had always been fought. It was civilized. It was honorable. It was predictable. Veltar's crystal form glowed with satisfaction as he finalized his battle plan. The attack would happen in 3 days, giving both sides time to prepare properly. The Netheri would probably bring 12 ships to defend their mining station. Veltar would bring 15 ships to ensure victory. After a few hours of fighting, the Netheri would retreat and the Zephyrians would claim another mining station. It never occurred to Veltar that there might be other ways to fight a war. On the edge of human space, Captain Maria Santos sat on the bridge of her ship, the HSV Prometheus. She was reading reports about the alien war with great interest. After 3,000 years of peace, something was finally happening in the galaxy. Artemis, she said to her ship's AI, What do you think of these alien battle tactics? The AI's voice came from speakers around the bridge. They appear to follow very rigid patterns, Captain. Their movements are predictable, and they seem to announce their intentions before taking action. From a military perspective, it is quite inefficient. Captain Santos smiled. Inefficient is one word for it. What would happen if one of their fleets encountered a human ship? Based on their technology and tactics, a single human frigate could defeat their entire battle group without sustaining damage. And they don't know we exist? Correct. Their intelligence networks have not updated their information about humanity in over 2,000 years. They believe we are still a pre-industrial civilization. Captain Santos leaned back in her chair. Humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for a war that never came. They had built weapons that could reshape reality itself. They had created defenses that could survive the death of stars. They had developed tactics for fighting enemies that existed only in their imagination. And now finally there was a real war happening in the galaxy. The only problem was that no one had invited humanity to participate. That oversight was about to become very important. Admiral Vexthul stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, as it approached the edge of what his maps called neutral space. Behind him followed 30 of the Korthani Empire's best warships, each one armed with the latest technology his people had developed over the past few months of renewed warfare. The target was a small space station called New Singapore. According to his intelligence reports, it was a trading post used by the primitive humans. Vexthul planned to destroy it quickly and claim the surrounding star systems for the Korthani Empire. It would be an easy victory to boost the morale of his warriors. "Admiral," said Commander Grixith, his second in command, "our sensors detect the space station ahead. It appears to be lightly defended. Only a few small ships in the area." Vexthul's 4 eyes focused on the display screen. The space station looked simple and peaceful, surrounded by what appeared to be merchant vessels. No weapons platforms were visible. No defense fleets were patrolling the area. "Perfect," Vexthul said, showing his metal teeth in a predatory smile. "This will be over quickly. Send the standard challenge to the station commander. Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender or be destroyed." This was how civilized warfare worked. You announced your intentions. You gave the enemy time to prepare. You fought with honor. Inside New Singapore Station, Station Commander Lisa Park was having her morning coffee when the alien message arrived. She was a calm woman in her 50s who had been managing the station for 20 years. In all that time, the most exciting thing that had happened was a minor collision between 2 cargo ships. "Commander," said her assistant, looking confused, "we're receiving a transmission from an unknown fleet. They're demanding our surrender." Lisa Park nearly choked on her coffee. "Surrender? Who wants us to surrender?" "They identify themselves as the Korthani Empire. They say we have 1 hour to evacuate the station before they destroy it." Lisa looked out the observation window at the 30 warships approaching their position. They were big and looked dangerous, with sharp angles and dark metal hulls. But something about them seemed old-fashioned. "Artemis," she said to the station's AI, "analyze those ships. What are we dealing with?" The AI's response was immediate. "The vessels appear to use fusion drive propulsion, basic energy shields, and kinetic projectile weapons. Technology level is approximately equivalent to human civilian transport from 2800 AD. Lisa blinked. "You mean they're using technology that's over 1,000 years behind ours?" "Correct. Their most advanced weapon systems appear to be plasma cannons, which our standard shields can absorb indefinitely." Lisa activated the emergency communication system that connected New Singapore to the Human Defense Network. Within seconds, she was talking to Admiral Chen of the Solar Defense Fleet. "Admiral, we have a situation. 30 alien warships are demanding our surrender. They want to destroy the station." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She was a middle-aged woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen many battles, even though most of them were just training exercises.
"Aliens? What type of aliens?"
"They call themselves the Korthani Empire. Artemis says their technology is primitive compared to ours." Admiral Chen paused, thinking quickly. "This is the first hostile contact with aliens in 3,000 years. I'm sending Captain Santos and the Prometheus to assist you. She's in the area conducting training exercises." 3 light-years away, Captain Maria Santos received the message on her ship's bridge. The HSV Prometheus was humanity's newest exploration vessel, designed to investigate unknown parts of the galaxy. It was also, like all human ships, heavily armed and ready for combat. Finally, Santos said to her crew, "Something interesting is happening. Artemis, set course for New Singapore Station. Maximum speed. Course plotted, Captain. Arrival time, 7 minutes." The Prometheus folded space around itself and disappeared from normal reality. When it reappeared near New Singapore Station, Admiral Vexthal's sensors barely detected it. To his instruments, it looked like a small merchant ship had just arrived. "Admiral," Commander Grixth reported, "another human vessel has entered the area. It appears to be a small transport ship." Vexthal dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "Ignore it. Focus on the space station. Are our weapons ready?" "All plasma cannons charged and ready to fire, Admiral." Vexthal looked at the countdown timer. The humans had 5 minutes left to surrender. When the time was up, he would demonstrate the power of the Korthani Empire to these primitive creatures. On the Prometheus, Captain Santos was studying the alien fleet formation. The ships were arranged in a perfect attack pattern, but it was a pattern from ancient military textbooks. Predictable and easy to counter. "Artemis," she said, "what would be an appropriate response to this situation? Based on historical precedent and current threat assessment, I recommend a proportional warning shot." Santos nodded. A warning shot made sense. These aliens might not realize how dangerous it was to threaten human civilians. "Very well. Target the empty space between their lead ships. Fire 1 pulse from the entropy lance. Minimum power setting." The Prometheus fired its warning shot. From Admiral Vexthal's perspective, what happened next was impossible. A beam of energy that his sensors couldn't even identify struck the space between his ships. Where the beam hit, reality seemed to unravel. 3 of his dreadnoughts simply stopped existing. They didn't explode or break apart. They just weren't there anymore. And then space itself began to fold and twist, creating what his scientists would later identify as a temporary wormhole connecting their location to the Andromeda Galaxy. "What? What was that?" Vexthal whispered, his forearms trembling. Commander Grixith was staring at his instruments in terror. "Admiral, 3 of our ships are gone. Completely gone. And that wormhole, it's showing us another galaxy." Vexthal looked at the human ship that had fired the weapon. It was small and peaceful looking, with smooth curves and no visible weapons. How had something so small destroyed 3 of his most powerful warships? On the Prometheus, Captain Santos frowned at her tactical display. "Artemis, what happened to the minimum power setting?" "The entropy lance is functioning normally, Captain. However, I should note that minimum power for our weapons may be considerably more destructive than these aliens expect." Santos looked at the remaining alien ships, which had stopped moving and appeared to be in some kind of panic. "Open a communication channel." Admiral Vexthal's communication system activated, and he found himself looking at a human face for the first time in his life. The human appeared to be a middle-aged female with dark hair and calm eyes. "This is Captain Santos of the human space vessel Prometheus," she said politely. "You appear to have made an error. New Singapore Station is under human protection. I suggest you reconsider your attack." Vexthal tried to speak, but no words came out. His warriors, the bravest in the galaxy, were openly staring at the small human ship that had just demonstrated power beyond their comprehension. Vexthal finally managed to say, "We did not know humans possessed such weapons." Captain Santos looked surprised. "Weapons? That was just a warning shot from one of our older systems. We weren't trying to hurt anyone." The wormhole finally collapsed, but not before several alien ships had been pulled partially into it. They rematerialized, missing various parts of their hulls. "Perhaps," Santos continued, "you would like to discuss this situation peacefully. I'm sure we can reach an understanding." Admiral Vexthal looked at his remaining fleet. More than half of his ships were damaged or destroyed, and all from a single warning shot from what the human claimed was an old weapon system. For 3,000 years, the Korthani had been the strongest military force in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated every enemy they had ever faced. But in less than 30 seconds, a single human ship had demonstrated that everything they knew about warfare was hopelessly outdated. "Commander Grixith," Vexthal said quietly, "send a message to Korthani High Command. Tell them we need to talk." "What should the message say, Admiral?" Vexthal looked at the human ship again, this time with something that might have been respect. "Tell them we found the humans." On New Singapore Station, Commander Lisa Park watched the alien fleet beginning to retreat. She turned to her assistant and smiled. Well, she said, that was interesting. Make a note in the log. First contact with hostile aliens. Warning shot fired. Situation resolved peacefully. Oh, and send a thank you message to Captain Santos. She paused and looked out at the stars, where more human ships were beginning to arrive from all over the sector. Word was spreading through the human defense network that aliens had finally made contact. And maybe, she added, we should call Earth. They're going to want to know about this. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had spent 3,000 years of peace preparing for exactly this moment. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any message had ever traveled before. Within hours of Admiral Vexthal's encounter with the human ship, every major alien civilization was holding emergency meetings. The most powerful military force in known space had been defeated in less than 4 minutes by a single vessel from a species they had considered primitive. On the crystal world of Zeph High, Commander Veltar stood before an emergency assembly of the Zephyrian High Council. His crystal body was flashing rapid patterns of red and orange, colors that meant extreme distress. Honored counselors, he said, his voice creating harmonic resonances throughout the crystal chamber. We have received confirmed reports from the Korthani Empire. Their strongest fleet was destroyed by one human ship using weapons our scientists cannot even identify. Elder Silnan, whose ancient crystal form had witnessed the original Armistice, pulsed with deep blue skepticism. This cannot be accurate. Our intelligence reports show that humans are barely beyond their industrial age. They should still be using chemical rockets and metal projectiles. That is what our reports said, Veltar agreed. But our reports are 3,000 years old. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. On the gas giant Nethmore, similar emergency meetings were taking place. Admiral Valesh of the Nathari floated in the dense atmosphere, her gaseous form swirling with anxiety. Around her, other Nathari leaders were accessing ancient databases, trying to find any information about human capabilities. The humans were listed as a developing species when the Armistice began, reported Chief Researcher Mortel. Our last contact with them was over 2 millennia ago. They had just achieved faster-than-light travel using primitive jump drives. And now, Admiral Valish asked, now they appear to have weapons that can alter the fundamental structure of reality itself. The insect world of Arektar was buzzing with activity as General Zixith called together his military advisors. The Araknari had always prided themselves on their analytical approach to warfare. But this situation was beyond their ability to analyze. Show me the tactical recordings from the Korthani engagement, Zixith clicked, his mandibles moving rapidly in a pattern that indicated deep thought. The holographic display showed the brief battle from multiple angles. The alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the human warning shot erased 3 Korthani dreadnoughts from existence and opened a portal to another galaxy. This is impossible, whispered Captain Hivix, one of Zixith's best strategists. No weapon should be able to do that. It violates every law of physics we know. General Zixith's compound eyes focused on the image of the human ship. Perhaps, he said slowly, we don't know all the laws of physics. While the alien leaders struggled to understand what had happened, humans across the galaxy were having their own emergency meetings. The difference was that humans had been preparing for this moment for 3,000 years. On Earth, President Sarah Martinez stood before a joint session of the Global Parliament. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from every human world and colony. For the first time in centuries, they were discussing the possibility of actual warfare. Ladies and gentlemen, President Martinez began, after 3,000 years of isolation, we have made contact with the galactic community. Unfortunately, that contact began with them attempting to destroy one of our space stations. Murmurs filled the hall. Most humans had grown up believing that aliens were peaceful, or at least not interested in humanity. Director James Morrison of the Diplomatic Corps stood to address the assembly. Our analysis of the alien databases recovered from the Korthani ships reveals some disturbing information. The galaxy has been at war for 6 months. Multiple species are fighting over territory and resources, and apparently they decided to expand into human space without bothering to ask our permission. General Patricia Adams, now promoted to Supreme Military Commander, presented her report next. The good news is that their technology is approximately 2,000 to 3,000 years behind ours. The bad news is that there are 12 major alien civilizations, and they collectively outnumber us by about 1,000,000,000 to 1. President Martinez nodded grimly. What are our options, General? We have 3 choices, Adams replied. First, we can try to negotiate a peaceful solution. Second, we can withdraw from our outer colonies and defend only our core worlds. Third, we can demonstrate our military capabilities clearly enough that they decide to leave us alone. Ambassador Chen, who had been monitoring alien communications, stood up. Mr. President, I think we need to understand something important. These aliens don't see us as equals. Their databases still list humanity as a primitive species. They think the destruction of Admiral Vexthal's fleet was some kind of accident or natural phenomenon. The hall buzzed with conversation. After a few minutes, President Martinez called for quiet. What do you recommend, Ambassador? Chen looked around the hall at the representatives of humanity. I recommend we educate them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien technology, was working in her laboratory when she received a call from the Global Defense Command. She had spent her entire career studying aliens she had never met, and now those aliens were actually threatening humanity. Dr. Tanaka, General Adams said over the communication link, I need you to prepare a technology demonstration package, something that will make it clear to the aliens that we are not primitive. How clear do you want to be, General? Clear enough that they never consider attacking us again, but not so clear that we accidentally destroy them all. Dr. Tanaka thought about this for a moment. I can prepare a basic package showing our early space-age technology. Nothing too advanced, maybe our 2800 AD era systems. Is that safe? General, our 2800 AD technology could probably conquer this entire galaxy in about 6 months, but it should be sufficient for a peaceful demonstration. Meanwhile, across alien space, the various species were frantically trying to update their intelligence on humanity. What they found in their ancient archives was terrifying. The Zephyrian crystal beings discovered records showing that humans had achieved interstellar travel 3,000 years ago using primitive but functional faster-than-light drives. If they had been advancing steadily during the Armistice, their current technology would be far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Netheri gas cloud species found old reports mentioning that humans were unusually creative and adaptable. Where other species specialized in specific areas, humans seemed to excel at everything they tried. The insect-like Arachnari discovered the most disturbing information of all. Humans appeared to have no natural enemies on their homeworld. They were the dominant species on their planet, not because they were the strongest or fastest, but because they were the most efficient at warfare. Admiral Vexthal was recalled to the Korthani capital world to explain his defeat. He stood before the War Council, his forearms bound in chains of dishonor. Explain to us, Admiral, said Supreme War Leader Colthax, how 30 of our finest warships were defeated by one enemy vessel. Vexthal had spent the journey home trying to find words to describe what he had witnessed. Honored leader, the human weapon did not destroy our ships in any way we understand. It made them not exist, as if reality itself was rewritten to exclude them. That is impossible. Yes, honored leader, but I watched it happen. The War Council was silent for a long moment. Finally, Colthax spoke again. What is your assessment of human military capabilities? Vexthal looked up at his superiors. Honored leader, I believe we have been trying to fight a war with children's toys while the humans have been building weapons that gods might use. The War Council did not like this answer, but they could not argue with the results. Similar conversations were happening throughout alien space. Every military leader who studied the recorded data from the battle came to the same conclusion. Humanity had been preparing for war while everyone else had been enjoying peace. On Earth, the final preparations for first official contact were being completed. Ambassador Chen would lead a diplomatic mission to the Galactic Council chambers. She would be accompanied by a small fleet of human ships to demonstrate that humanity was a spacefaring civilization, worthy of respect. The ships chosen for this mission were from humanity's older fleet, vessels that were only about 1,000 years behind current technology. Even these primitive human ships could outrun and outfight anything the aliens possessed, but they looked less threatening than the newest designs. As the human diplomatic fleet prepared to depart, President Martinez addressed the nation one final time. "My fellow humans," she said, "for 3,000 years we have wondered why the galaxy seemed so quiet. We prepared for invasions that never came. We built defenses against enemies that never appeared. We advanced our technology, our military capabilities, and our strategic thinking while living in peaceful isolation." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Today we learned that the galaxy was not quiet because it was peaceful. It was quiet because everyone was taking a very long nap. That nap is over now, and they have discovered that while they were sleeping we were very busy." The diplomatic fleet departed Earth the next day, carrying with it the hopes and fears of humanity. They were about to announce to the galaxy that a new power had awakened, one that had spent 3 millennia preparing for exactly this moment. The aliens were about to learn that some species use peace to rest, while others use it to get ready for war. The Galactic Council chambers had not been modified in 3,000 years, but today workers scrambled to add a 13th environmental pod for the newest participants. The human delegation would need an atmosphere they could breathe, though preliminary scans suggested they could survive in most of the other environments without assistance. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the HSV Diplomacy, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Behind her, a small fleet of human ships maintained a respectful distance. They were older vessels by human standards: the HSV Prometheus, the HSV Endeavour, and 12 other ships that represented humanity's diplomatic technology. "Nervous?" asked Captain Santos, who had been assigned to provide military support for the diplomatic mission. Chen smiled. "A little. It's not every day you introduce your species to galactic civilization." "Artemis," Santos said to the ship's AI, "what are the aliens' current emotional states based on their communication patterns?" "Analysis indicates high levels of anxiety across all species, Captain. Several governments have placed their military forces on high alert. There also appears to be significant debate about how to respond to humanity's request for formal recognition." Chen nodded. This was expected. In the 2 weeks since the incident at New Singapore Station, every alien government had been frantically trying to understand what humanity represented. Inside the council chambers, the alien representatives were indeed anxious. Admiral Vexthul stood in the center of the room, no longer wearing chains but clearly uncomfortable. He had been asked to brief the council on his encounter with human military capabilities. "Honored delegates," he began, "I want to be clear about what we witnessed. The human vessel fired what they called a warning shot, using what they described as an old weapon system. This single shot destroyed 3 of our most advanced dreadnoughts instantly and created a temporary gateway to another galaxy." Elder Silnan of the Zephyrians pulsed with skeptical blue light. "Admiral, you ask us to believe that humans possess technology that can manipulate space and time itself. I ask you to believe what I witnessed with my own eyes," Vexthul replied. "But there is more. Our intelligence teams have been analyzing human space for the past 2 weeks. They have colonies on over 1,000 worlds. Their ships travel at speeds our physicists say are impossible, and every single human world appears to be heavily fortified." Commander Veltar's crystal form flashed worried orange. "How heavily fortified?" "Each of their major worlds has orbital defense platforms that could destroy our entire battle fleet. Their smaller colonies have weapons that could devastate planets, and according to our long-range sensors, these are just the defenses they allow us to see." The council chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this information. General Zixth of the Arachnari clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "What about their numbers? Surely they cannot have a large population if they have been expanding so rapidly." Vexthul consulted his datapad. "Our estimates suggest they have approximately 50 billion individuals spread across their territory. However, their level of automation is extraordinary. Each human appears to control resources and technology equivalent to what 1,000 of our people might possess." Admiral Valesh of the Nathari swirled nervously. "Are they hostile? Do they plan to conquer us?" "That is what we are here to determine," said Supreme War Leader Colthax of the Korthani. "They have requested formal recognition and a seat on the Galactic Council. They claim they wish to establish peaceful relations. And if we refuse?" asked Elder Silnan. Colthax looked around the chamber at his fellow military commanders. Based on their demonstrated capabilities, refusal is not a practical option. Outside the station, the human diplomatic fleet received permission to dock. Ambassador Chen and her team transferred to the council chambers, where they found themselves the center of attention from beings they had only imagined for thousands of years. The first thing Chen noticed was how primitive everything looked. The council chambers used technology that humans had surpassed centuries ago. The alien representatives themselves were fascinating from a biological perspective, but their equipment and facilities seemed almost quaint. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, Chen began, speaking into the translation system. I am Ambassador Sarah Chen, representing the United Human Federation. We come before you today to establish formal diplomatic relations and to take our place as members of the galactic community. Admiral Vexthul stepped forward. Ambassador Chen, before we proceed, I must ask, are your people planning to expand into territories currently claimed by other species? Chen looked surprised. Expand? Admiral, we currently control over 200 star systems with more than 1,000 inhabited worlds. We have no need to expand into anyone else's territory. In fact, we were surprised to learn that you had planned to expand into ours. Uncomfortable sounds filled the chamber. Several species made their equivalent of nervous laughter. Elder Silnan pulsed with formal blue light. Ambassador, our records indicate that your species was primitive when the Great Armistice began. How did you achieve such rapid technological advancement? I think there may have been a misunderstanding, Chen replied diplomatically. We were not primitive 3,000 years ago. We had already achieved faster-than-light travel, and were beginning to establish interstellar colonies. We simply assumed that everyone else was continuing to advance their technology as well. But you never contacted us during the Armistice, Commander Veltar observed. Chen smiled. We tried initially, but your civilization seemed to have closed their borders to outside contact. We assumed you preferred isolation, so we respected that choice and focused on our own development. General Zixth clicked rapidly, a sign of deep thought. Ambassador, what exactly has humanity been doing for the past 3,000 years? Exploring, expanding, learning, and... Chen paused, choosing her words carefully. Preparing for the possibility that the peace might not last forever. Preparing how? Admiral Valesh asked nervously. Dr. Elena Martinez, humanities scientific advisor, stepped forward. Perhaps I can answer that. We have been advancing our understanding of physics, developing new technologies, and creating systems to defend our civilization if necessary. What kind of systems? Colthax demanded. Dr. Martinez looked around the chamber, noting the primitive technology on display. Well, we developed better starships, more efficient energy sources, advanced materials, and various defensive and strategic capabilities. Such as the reality revision engines, dimensional folding drives, entropy manipulation systems, probability alteration devices, and quantum consciousness transfer networks. The translation system struggled with these concepts. Most of them had no equivalent terms in any alien language. Chen decided to be more direct. Honored delegates, I think we need to address the real issue here. You recently decided to end your long peace and return to warfare. You began expanding into territories you thought were undefended. One of those territories belonged to us. She gestured to the holographic display showing the battle at New Singapore Station. Captain Santos fired a warning shot to protect our civilians. We had no intention of harming anyone, but we could not allow attacks on human settlements. Admiral Vexthul nodded grimly. That warning shot destroyed half my fleet. Yes, and we apologize for that, Chen said sincerely. We should have used a smaller calibration. We didn't realize how much our defensive capabilities had advanced compared to current galactic standards. The alien representatives exchanged worried glances. The humans were apologizing for being too powerful. Elder Silnan pulsed with desperate curiosity. Ambassador, exactly how advanced are your current capabilities? Dr. Martinez consulted her datapad. Well, the systems we used at New Singapore were from our early space age, probably equivalent to our technology from around 2800 AD. We've made significant improvements since then. How significant? General Zixith asked. Our current military capabilities could probably, well, let me put it diplomatically. If we wanted to conquer the entire galaxy, it would take us about 6 months. But we don't want to do that. We prefer peaceful coexistence. The chamber erupted in alarmed sounds from all 12 alien species. Chen raised her hand for silence, which is why we're proposing a different solution. We would like to share some of our older technology with you. Nothing too advanced, just enough to bring everyone up to a more equivalent level. What do you want in return? Colthax asked suspiciously. We want to participate in your war, Chen said cheerfully. Every alien representative stared at her in horror. Not to conquer anyone, she quickly clarified, but for the experience. You see, we've been preparing for warfare for 3,000 years, but we've never actually had a chance to test our theories in practice. This galactic war of yours sounds like an excellent opportunity for field exercises. Admiral Vexthul found his voice. Field exercises? Educational demonstrations. Training scenarios. You know, war games, but with real participants. It would be very educational for both sides. The aliens looked at each other with growing understanding. The humans weren't offering to share technology out of kindness. They were offering to lift everyone up to a barely competitive level, so they could have interesting opponents to practice against. Commander Veltar flashed rapid patterns of light, the crystal equivalent of panic. And if we refuse this generous offer, Chen's smile became slightly less warm. Then I suppose you'll continue fighting each other with your current technology levels. We'll just observe, and occasionally protect our territory when you accidentally intrude on it. The implications were clear. The aliens could accept human help and be elevated to the level of interesting opponents, or they could continue their primitive warfare while humanity watched from the sidelines, occasionally swatting them away when they became inconvenient. Elder Silnan pulsed with resignation. What kind of technology are you offering to share? Basic post-scarcity manufacturing, elementary matter compilation, standard dimensional folding, entry-level consciousness transfer systems. Nothing too advanced. Just enough to make your wars more engaging, Dr. Martinez added helpfully. We thought we'd start with technology from our early space age and see how quickly you can adapt to it. Supreme War Leader Colthax looked around at his fellow military commanders. They were the strongest, most advanced warriors in the galaxy, and they were being treated like children who needed better toys so they could provide adequate entertainment. How long? He asked quietly. Would this technological upgrade take? Oh, probably 6 months to a year, Chen replied. We'd need to establish manufacturing centers, train your people, update your infrastructure. It's quite a project. And then, Chen's smile returned to full warmth. Then we can have a proper war, with interesting tactics, creative strategies, and opponents who might actually surprise us. It will be wonderful. The council chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, Elder Silnan spoke for all of them. We accept your generous offer, Ambassador Chen. Chen clapped her hands together happily. Excellent. Dr. Martinez will coordinate the technology transfers. Captain Santos will provide tactical consulting. And I'll work with your diplomatic corps to establish the rules of engagement for our new, improved galactic war. She paused and looked around the chamber at the alien representatives. This is going to be so much fun. The galaxy's new age of warfare lasted exactly 18 minutes from the moment humanity officially joined. It turns out that even with upgraded technology, fighting against people who had spent 3,000 years theorizing about warfare was not particularly competitive. The peace that followed was the most stable in galactic history, primarily because no one wanted to risk waking humanity from their cheerful return to preparing for the next war that will never come. In the end, the aliens learned that some sleeping giants prefer to stay awake once you've disturbed them, and humans learned that sometimes the best way to prevent war is to be so overwhelmingly good at it that everyone else loses interest.